the story that started it all. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is the blueprint for the enemies to lovers trope that dominates our media. Every bickering rom-com couple, every dramatic slow burn romance on your favorite streaming show, it all owes something to Austen's razor-sharp wit and emotional insight. But this isn't a literature class. We're here to talk about film. And luckily, in 2005, director Joe Wright gave us a cinematic adaptation that is not only faithful to the novel's emotional core, it's arguably one of the most beautiful romantic films to ever be made. In Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice, both Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy must confront the titular pride and prejudice that initially blind them to each other's true character. Their love story isn't perfect, and that's the point. It's about shedding ego, challenging assumptions, and choosing vulnerability. But to understand that change, we have to go back to where all true love stories begin, with some absolutely delusional first impressions.
But her sister Elizabeth is very agreeable.
Perfectly tolerable, I dare say. Not handsome enough to tempt me. You'd better return to your partner and enjoy her.
Let's start with Pride. It is the first in the title after all. So Elizabeth Bennet, as director Joe Wright puts it, is a girl who fell in love. But she's also a girl with a fierce sense of self, sharp instincts, and perhaps most importantly, pride in her own moral compass. She sees herself as clever, observant, independent, and she takes pride in those traits because in her world, they're the only real power she has. She's not rich, she's not politically connected. Her future, like every woman in her time, depended on marriage. And yet Elizabeth doesn't want to settle. She wants to marry for love, or not at all. In an article about the movie, Focus Features reveals that the first time we see Lizzie, she's walking alone across a misty English field, reading a book called First Impressions, which, fun fact, was Austen's original title for the novel. So yes, Lizzie is quite literally reading the end of her own story. When Elizabeth walks into the chaos of Longbourn, the difference is immediate. The home is noisy, full of messy affection and emotional outbursts. Everyone talks over each other. People grab, laugh, shout. It's pure, unfiltered family life. And Wright intentionally lets it play like overlapping music, a cacophony of warmth, but also disorder. Elizabeth may roll her eyes at her mother, but she belongs to this world. Her pride is not just in herself, but in her roots, in being real. Enter Mr. Darcy. He arrives at the Meryton Assembly like a walking cold front. Still, silent, closed off. As audience members, we're kept at a distance, mirroring Elizabeth's perspective. He doesn't speak unless he has to, he doesn't dance, and he doesn't smile at all. In the original script, this is all intentional. Darcy isn't meant to be understood right away. He's not charming, he's not even particularly likable, and that's important, because Darcy's pride looks different than Elizabeth's. His pride is about duty. He's wealthy, titled, and burdened with the expectations that come with that. His upbringing has taught him that restraint is virtue, that emotion is weakness, that marrying beneath his station would bring shame to his name. So he holds everything in, every thought, every feeling, every glance. But Elizabeth, she throws that whole system into chaos. She's clever, she's perceptive, and she doesn't cater to him. From the moment she overhears his insult, tolerable, I suppose, her wounded pride acts as a shield. She decides right then who he is. Arrogant, cold, judgmental, and she's done. And honestly, that reaction's fair. Because for Elizabeth, Darcy isn't just rude. He represents everything about the upper class that grates against her values. He looks down on her, he insults her at parties, he walks around like he's perpetually annoyed by everyone around him. Her pride tells her, you don't need this man's approval. You're enough. You are better than this. And Darcy's pride, it tells him the same thing. She's not suitable. This can't work. You're above this. He doesn't know how to process her because Elizabeth is not from his world. She doesn't play the social games he understands. She says what she means. She walks through rooms with dirt on her hem and a spark in her eye. And that terrifies him. Because pride isn't always about arrogance. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism. For Darcy, pride is the wall he hides behind so he doesn't have to feel. For Elizabeth, pride is what keeps her from being vulnerable to someone who might hurt her. It's what allows her to reject Collins, to mock Lady Catherine, to walk away from comfort if it comes at the cost of self-respect. Pride is what keeps them safe, and it's what keeps them apart.
You, Mr. Darcy. I can more easily forgive his vanity had he not wounded mine.
Now that we've tackled pride, the shield, the wall, the emotional armor, let's get into prejudice. Because while Darcy may walk into the story with the highest amount of visible pride, Elizabeth walks in with a mountain of assumptions. From the moment she overhears that now infamous "tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me" line, she files Mr. Darcy into her mental folder titled "Men Not Worth My Time." And look, fair enough, he was a jerk. But Elizabeth doesn't stop there. She builds a whole personality profile around him. Cold, arrogant, emotionless, entitled. May I go on? And it's not just about a bad first impression. It's about class, power, gender. It's about the stories we tell ourselves when we feel belittled. Elizabeth's world is constantly reminding her that she is disposable, unless she marries well. So, of course, she bristles at the idea of being dismissed by someone like Darcy. Her pride feels attacked, and her prejudice kicks in like clockwork. Now enter George Wickham. George Wickham is the classic charming guy with a tragic backstory, or so we think. He tells Elizabeth that Darcy denied him the living he was promised, that Darcy was cruel, unfair, heartless to poor old Wickham. And so Elizabeth feels terribly about this. And because this story confirms her perception of Darcy, she believes every word, without any fact-checking, without any skepticism, just pure, yep, that tracks. Darcy, for all his emotional repression, is judging Elizabeth just as harshly. He sees her family's chaotic behavior, Mrs. Bennet shouting about marriage, Lydia and Kitty's drunkenness, Mr. Collins being whatever he is. He assumes that Elizabeth must be just like the rest of them, that she's beneath him. Her muddy dress at Netherfield, her forwardness, the loudness of her home. None of it fits into his idea of what a suitable partner should look like. That her feelings, her intellect, her character don't matter because she's from the wrong kind of people. And it's this quiet, mutual misjudgment that keeps them circling each other like two mismatched magnets. In one of the most quietly cutting scenes, Elizabeth finds out that Darcy is responsible for separating Jane and Bingley. From her perspective, it's confirmation that he's not just snobbish, but actively cruel. He's sabotaging happiness just to protect his sense of superiority. Never mind that she doesn't know the whole story. She's already decided who he is. And here's the thing. They're both trying to do what they think is right. Elizabeth thinks she's protecting her sister. Darcy thinks he's protecting his friend. But neither of them actually know the truth about each other. They're talking past each other, seeing what they want to see, not listening, just judging. Because prejudice isn't always loud and hateful. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's just the refusal to let someone surprise you. And that refusal builds and builds until it reaches a breaking point, until it rains and words get shouted, until someone says something they can't take back, until the catalyst for their change.
So this is your opinion of me. Thank you for explaining so fully. Perhaps these offences might have been overlooked had not your pride been hurt by my honesty in admitting scruples about our relationship. Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your circumstances?
And those are the words of a gentleman. From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
The rain, the ruins, the brooding, the angst. The most chaotic marriage proposal in literary history. The rain proposal, TM, is a scene that shatters everything. Not just for Elizabeth and Darcy, but for us, the audience. Because up until now, we've seen pride, we've seen prejudice, but this is where it all explodes. Darcy shows up, soaking wet, emotionally overwhelmed, and convinced that he's about to get the girl. And technically, he is confessing his love, but wow, does he do it wrong.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently.
Romantic, sure. but it's immediately undercut by what follows, a monologue about how much it pains him to love her, how inferior her social status is, how he's been fighting this attraction like it's a disease he's finally surrendering to.
I have struggled in vain and I can bear it no longer. These past months have been a torment. I came to Rosings with the single object of seeing you. I had to see you. I have fought against my better judgment, my family's expectation, the inferiority of your birth, my rank and circumstance, all these things, and I'm willing to put them aside and ask you to end my agony.
I know. He essentially just said, I love you even though you're poor, and marrying you would be a huge downgrade, but I just can't help myself. So, clearly, Darcy's pride is still front and center. He's not confessing love to her as an equal, he's admitting defeat to a force he couldn't conquer. He expects gratitude for loving her despite everything. He thinks confessing love is enough, even when it's laced with judgment. Elizabeth, whose pride has now hardened into certainty, tears him apart. Her pride and her assumptions explode into one of the most satisfying absolutely nots ever filmed. She doesn't even let him down gently. She fires back with all of her prejudice, all of the assumptions she's built about his character, Wickham's lies, Jane and Bingley's heartbreak, and she tears him apart.
Might I ask why, with so little endeavour at civility, I am thus repulsed?
And I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you chose to tell me that you like me against your better judgment.
Her anger is righteous, but it's also reactive. She's lashing out not just because he hurt her sister or because he insulted her family, but because his proposal feels like a confirmation of every judgment she's ever made about him. She thinks he's cold, she thinks he's cruel, she thinks he sees her as a charity case. And to be fair, in this moment, he kind of does. So what's so compelling and so tragic about this proposal is that they're both being honest. Painfully, devastatingly honest. They're just speaking two different languages, shaped by pride and warped by prejudice. Darcy is trying, but he's trying badly. He's spent so long hiding behind formality and class that when he finally lays his heart bare, it comes out as judgment. And Elizabeth, she's furious, not just at him, but at herself, for ever thinking he might be different. This scene isn't about love, not yet. It's about ego, about miscommunication, about two people who are finally saying what they feel, but neither one is ready to hear it. And just when it seems like the bridge is irreparably burned, something unexpected happens. Darcy doesn't give up so easily. He doesn't retaliate, he writes a letter. And with that, we move from the catalyst to the beginning of real change.
Is he? Are you all right?
I hardly know.
Okay, if the rain proposal is the spark, then the letter is the wildfire. After Elizabeth completely demolishes Darcy in what is, frankly, an iconic mic drop moment, he doesn't double down, he doesn't try to argue, he leaves her be. And he writes a letter. A great letter. In the quiet of the morning, Elizabeth reads Darcy's letter, and in it, everything changes. First, we get the truth. Wickham was lying. Darcy didn't destroy his life. He protected his sister from being seduced by him. And his interference in Jane and Bingley's relationship, it wasn't cruel, it was misguided. He genuinely believed Jane didn't love Bingley back. And while it doesn't excuse him, it explains him. This is where Darcy lays down his pride. There's no grand speech, no defensive tone, just a man stripped of ego explaining himself not to impress or defend, but because Elizabeth deserves the truth. And for Elizabeth, this is shattering. Not just because Darcy isn't the villain that she thought he was, but because it forces her to see herself clearly for the first time. Joe Wright describes this moment as one of self-reflection. Elizabeth stands before a mirror. She's looking directly into camera, into us, because she's confronting her own flawed perception. We're not just watching her see herself differently, we're invited to see her as she does for the first time.
And now she's come home and home is different. It's that her whole view of her world and her family and herself has shifted.
The house is still chaotic, her family is still embarrassing, but her perspective, completely rewritten. Darcy's letter doesn't fix their relationship. It doesn't win over Lizzie's heart. It simply plants the seed. And that's what makes it so effective. Because change, especially the kind that matters, doesn't happen in grand declarations. It happens in silence, in reflection, in how we choose to move forward.
How can I ever make amends for such behavior?
After what you have done for Lydia, and I suspect for Jane also, it is I who should be making amends.
You must know. Surely you must know it was all for you.
From this point on, romance stops being about tension and starts being about recognition. We see it in Elizabeth's visit to Pemberley, where Darcy's world is no longer intimidating, it's intriguing. Elizabeth explores the estate like someone rediscovering who he is, not as a rich man, but as a man of substance. She sees the bust of him, a literal sculpture of the man she thought she knew. He's cast in marble, but she's starting to see the soul beneath it. Okay, so we've established that Lizzie has changed, but what about Darcy? Don't worry, he's changed too. He welcomes her aunt and uncle, the very people he once would have snubbed. He goes fishing with her uncle. He speaks with ease. There's no pride left in him, just kindness. And then the ultimate moment of vulnerability, the dawn scene. It's the early morning after Elizabeth thinks she's lost it all. She can't sleep. She's torn up over the fact that she could have had Mr. Darcy and she's lost him forever. So she goes on a walk. But this time, she isn't reading a book like she was in the opening. She isn't reading about love anymore. Elizabeth has lived it. She's grown through it. And here comes Darcy. He walks across the field, bathed in golden light. It mirrors the opening scene. The sun has risen, and so have they. No more pride, no more prejudice, just two people who finally see each other and are brave enough to reach across the gap.
Have you no other objection than your belief in my indifference?
None at all. We all knew him to be a proud, unpleasant sort of fellow. But this would be nothing if you really liked him.
I do like him.
Yeah.
I love him. He's not proud. I was wrong. I was entirely wrong about him.
In the end, Pride and Prejudice isn't just a story about love. It's a story about becoming worthy of love. Elizabeth and Darcy don't fall in love in spite of their flaws. They fall in love because they confront them. They grow, they unlearn, they get uncomfortable, and they change. So yes, Pride and Prejudice is the blueprint for enemies to lovers. Remember that. But more than that, it's the blueprint for what it means to become someone capable of loving and being loved in return.
Shut the door, please, Elizabeth.